Hello, everybody. This is Empty Turtle. I'm here with Dr. David Jubb, and this is Jub Talk. And today we are going to continue our discussion or conversation about 4026. So thanks for tuning in. Remember to subscribe. Dr. Jubb, say hello.
Oh, g'day, mate. It's really amazing. It's such a great topic you jump into so fast and quick. Aristotle, do you know much about that bloke? Because he kind of was about 2,000 years ago. It's sort of like if we went to books now, you'd 2,300 years ago, right? Because it was around
Right.
Alexander's time. Because
Okay.
his dad Philip gave him an education and put him under Aristotle there for I
Wow.
think a few years.
What a great teacher to have.
Yeah, so Aristotle, pretty amazing. What you're going back to 3000 BC or something. See, so that's like 2,300 years ago, sort of thing, right?
That sounds about right.
Well, yeah, these are sort of things that are going on. If we let a few hundred years go or something, it's still, you're going to have records and stuff. But the records that we have sort of come about, and a lot of things are open sourceable, but then things happen and there comes to be bottlenecks. But do you think that leadership could be the control of information?
Yes, I think leadership does control information more than the average citizen thinks that. I mean, people as they get older start realizing, wow, we are being controlled more and more than we think. And I wish young people would catch on quicker because we are being manipulated through the media and whatever else the government wants to use to manipulate us. It's happening.
Do you think, let's see, people could be fooled a lot, which you can
Yes.
imagine, like in history, they sure were,
We're
because
being
they kind of
fooled
were.
right now a lot.
Well, yeah, like Pearl Harbor as a setup was, people could see, of course, that was a false flag.
Yeah. I don't know if we should even talk about that, but
No,
how
that's right.
about censoring all the COVID stuff? Anybody that made any sense about anything, they were censored because it wasn't what the government wanted us to hear.
Oh, well, but that's a word, I guess, because when we say government, that's we, the people, actually, because it's our credit that was spent, right? So, how did somebody else become the government? It's just,
Well,
in your brain.
and if you think about it, government, right? That is the first transgender, our government, right? Because when we say they and them, we're talking about our government. Thank you very much.
Interesting that slow but sure groupthink comes to be. That's not the government per se, but it is, but it's not, because like it doesn't consider the chain of command.
And what is the chain of command, senor?
Oh, well, from we're the people, because you and I or anybody has an oath to support the people of the state. Yeah, as a state citizen. And yeah, you're under oath, to protect people. But the question that I wanted to ask was, well, first you agreed, yeah, that's right.
Did I agree? I was
yeah,
born
yeah.
into it. Thank
Well,
you.
leadership, you said, was the control of information.
Yes.
And I think that's true. Let's see. Religion, then, well, that would be the definition of the submission to authority for the sake of certainty. I mean, if you're philosophical.
Well, I tell you what, a lot of people died because of religion.
Yeah, well,
They didn't have a choice in the matter.
Yeah, so it could be a dogma for sure because, in the literature it shows, like forensically, of course, that what happened 2,000 years ago was that they had documents where they'd taken people's title away from them. And this was sort of something that had been going on. And so those, like yourself or anyone in the day, they kind of really didn't know that they were the credet whore. You see? Everyone.
Creditor.
and you own where the Debet whore is. That's
Yeah,
a
sure.
that's a fiction, right? Like the federal government and the state government and corporations since 1993, those organisations all are
Corporations?
bankrupt.
Oh,
You see, they don't have any money. So where's the money?
it's in the air.
Well, it's actually we the people where the state is, you see.
Okay.
The state court where things are and this sort of thing. They're the ones who preside over the actual money, real money, because it's we the people who, it's our credit, you see.
In 4026, is it still we the people?
It sure is. It actually is. When you say government, there's not this quandary where it's being said in a manner that's sort of antagonistic or that we don't accept it. You see, it's sort of like, well, that's sort of
Really?
conflicted, because that was interesting to me that everyone that I talk with, I felt like I had to catch up myself, like incredible, because these people had incredible use of the vestibular sense.
The vestibular sense.
Yeah. So what is that? Because
Well,
we just
I would tell
that's a
you,
futuristic thing. It's sort
but I
of,
think it'd be
but we
better
should
if you
maybe could
explained it.
know about it, huh?
The vestibular sense?
Yeah.
What is that?
Well, do you know how gyroscopes keep things just floating in the air?
Gyroscope?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gyroscopic technology.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that you're able to just to keep a direction and keep
Balance.
movement going, but all move it in the one direction. Yes. Can you feel when you've got a gyroscope in your hand and you start winding it up and you really wind it up good, right? And now you go to move it in another way. It sort of has a force that's resisting.
Pretty cool, huh?
Yes, but it's in your hand, and honest to God, you can feel that there is a force inside your hand
Really?
that's resisting the movement of your hand. Yes.
Wow.
So you can feel that there's a gyroscopic force and things. And so basically, the vestibular sense is my
I want to feel that. I want
sense of whole body direction and sensation. Your
Okay.
whole body's direction and sensation, turning and movement, yes, are all vestibular. It's sort of like you've got semicircular canals with little hairs and bone and things and gel
I believe it.
and weight. And so when you turn your head or tilt your head or do something, you've got gravity pulling on these tiny little magneton, which are heavy, and their hairs sort of move a bit and this sort of thing, and we were able to tell that you've moved.
We're being so controlled by Mother Nature as well. It's unbelievable.
Well, nature isn't controlling us. Nature is the apparatus. It's like a fancy flight craft, but what we're talking about is maybe having a manual to fly the craft.
No, but I'm sure nature has developed ways to control us. Like you said, if we tilt our head right, our hair is bent towards the ground. Maybe that's one
that's
way
right.
of nature
Yes,
controlling us.
of course. Yes, exactly.
Or
okay.
demonstrating
Oh no,
that,
good
hey,
example. No, let me give you a good example.
We control you.
Let's see. Yeah, that's right. Because like we move toward, as you point out, what's pleasurable, and we move away from
And
things
nature
not.
is very pleasurable.
Yes, but you see, have you ever heard of people moving toward what's painful and moving away
They're out there. They're
from
out there.
the pleasantry, right? Yes.
Yes.
So that's a wrong use of the vestibular sense. That's what I
Is
learned
that-
a lot. Sort
So
of about.
you're talking about this because are they using their vestibular sense in the wrong way in the future in 4026?
Well, we just started to talk about the topic of it. In fact, like you said, actually, there
Is life so much pleasure?
Deguberation
Is life
is
so
control of the
pleasurable
mind.
in 4026 that they're starting to look for pain?
What happens there is wordedness and things about the confusion, as you can point out, that existing in someone's syntax doesn't exist there. And literal things is really what fills everything that I saw. I never saw anyone much with something illiterate except for something incredibly matter of fact that was illiterate and was acted as a synesthesia for me to have a consideration about something. Yeah, so it's sort of really purposeful. But you and I, well, we live in a world where selective restrictive violations, like you point out, are not congruent or integrated or let's see, causing anyone to be associated in the moment. Yeah, so these are things which I was very impressed because people were very much more present. That was one thing I saw, quite incredible, matter of fact, and quite a bit of a depth of listening. So it was for me to observe a lot, but let's see, what would you call it? Like imitate. Yeah, there you go. It's sort of so. I think it was quick for me. I could forget what I had, and had lost my ways when I was there. So I was just really had lost my ways, honest, and I was absorbed a lot by everything that was there.
In 4026?
Yeah, 4,000, the year 4026. Yes. So
Now, if you were to do this again, would you end up back in the same year, or would you end up somewhere totally different?
a point that would be just a purpose. Let's say prophecy stone that I came to realize was for people who had absolutely predicted things that would be 2,000 years into a future because they could see this and they prophesied this on a stone. And that to me was the weirdest thing because how could I thought it was so incredible someone know what the stars would have been cartography wise, at a certain time frame that you'd be able to see the stars in the heaven, and that made me realize that these are people who had such a sophisticated technology that they couldn't. Well, I mean, we hardly had that where we were, in the year 2026.
The Hopi? Who did it? The Hopi?
Ships and built cranes and built Chilago out.
The ones that looked into the future, was it the Hopi Indians that you said? Who were they?
Oh, we're talking about people who built a watch, for instance, in Switzerland in 10,000 BC, which keeps time into 100 years or more. Wow. A watch that keeps time to over 100 years.
They probably needed it because people.
Well, that is 10,000 BC.
That's amazing. Maybe you don't think maybe that came from the future?
Well, we back then could have questions, and it could be corrected, of course, because suddenly someone could tune into shows that would relate to the past. So suddenly we would not be able to say the Hopi per se or Tasmanians or something. I mean, but if you did, then you'd be able to relate to their history quite considerably. You wouldn't confuse that necessarily with the Moor Kush Empire, which is what governed and had the republic back, in the time of Queen Califia, and we're talking about Alexander. Having studied under Aristotle, and I kind of today, if you reach the highest standard of education, what do they call this?
A PhD.
Yeah. Okay, but but it's called Aristotelian logic. Yes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, that's the first time I heard of that, and I'm very logical.
Yeah. So logic was really off the charts. And if you could go back, here's a bloke who's really got a pretty good grasp on things relative, and you can see quite an incredible. Let's see, what would you say? Cross-disciplinary sort of a background too.
All right.
Because he's a bloke who sort of spent a lot of time in the university, 19 years or more. That's me. That's me alone.
Damn,
just
19 years
postgraduate education.
That's crazy.
But isn't it better that actually somebody really would have investigated things, like they really know about Genghis Khan, for instance?
It's almost a career there. Yeah. 19 years.
And you could go back in history and know about King Arthur, or Billy the Kid, even, you see, in America here.
That's fascinating.
What about Davy Crockett?
What does Davy Crockett have to do with the future? Do they?
Or Daniel Boone. Daniel Boone. No, Daniel Boone. Wow, he was a very, very popular bloke.
Yeah, he's
Daniel
badass.
Boone
And Davy Crockett. They're all
badasses. Daniel Boone was so damn intelligent. I tell you, But you could listen to what he said to Congress.
No, because
mate, unbelievable.
What? Devices.
Well, you could listen and hear when they were deciding whether or not to be able to tax or not.
Don't get me started.
You see, Daniel Boone said things that people were so spellbound by they couldn't vote that day afterward because they were so spellbound they didn't know what to say. So people repeated things that he'd said afterward a bit, but you could see that people weren't really quite understanding it. They said that he said that you would wake up and with what you're going to do, and babies will cry, and this what you're making is never going to be able to hear a baby cry, basically.
Okay, wow. Mind blown.
Anyway, I mean, you know,
Mind
you've got.
blown.
What about Confucius? Because like Confucius was even before this. Like, I mean, you know, really goes back. I think maybe 500 BC or something. I think, yeah. And but it was 600 years or more, well and truly. Or it might have been around the time of Aristotle, perhaps. But look, his work was buried for 600 years. That's Confucius.
It's confusing.
Yeah, Confucius, very amazing. Anyway, yeah, people actually have names of something, don't they? Like Smith is sort of like a smithing of putting things together.
All right.
Chicken House would be someone who had chickens.
Okay.
And then, you know, the last name, typical like a family name.
Mine means slow and methodical.
Slow and methodical, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Mine is a jubilation, which is, or a jubilee.
We say
which
jubilee.
Is, I know you say ooh like Jew.
Yes.
Yeah, we say in the more though it's ha. It's not ooh.
Okay.
Yeah, see, yeah, and it's also you,
Jubilee.
not ooh.
Jubilee.
So, for instance, like when I would say D-U-E.
Do.
I know I say it dew.
Oh, you
And
say
you
it
can-
do, and I say it do.
No, yeah, well that's wrong.
I get it.
Okay, but hold on. But then, like, these are the things that go on where languages are. It's quite interesting for us
See,
just to
here's the
think
deal.
about that a
Here's
little
the
bit.
deal.
But D-U-E spells dew, and then D-E-W spells what?
Do.
No, it doesn't. It spells do. It's w.
Here's the deal.
W. You have to have a w
I'm okay
there.
with being wrong. I'm okay with being wrong.
Oh, God help us. It's like, yeah, you have to meet someone like Confucius or Lao Tzu, and they never met anyone, you know, that was into right or wrong.
There you go.
They were only interested in the discussion about things
What about
and what
yin
have
and
you.
yang?
But Lao Tzu, he loved to drink a little bit, actually. You know,
Who?
we get wine.
Confucius?
No, Lao Tzu.
Who?
Oh, other famous people, like incredible. They gave us like,
You know, I think
like the. What about the Tao? Have you been into that a bit?
the Tao.
Yeah, like one hand clapping.
Oh no, no.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they had little cones and things, which was really pretty amazing, you know. And then you would really,
Cones for God.
I would learn
Cones
a
for
lot
God.
from the nonsense sort of thing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there were some funny things that
I'm
happened.
gonna
I
start a
tell
group.
you.
Cones for
But
God.
you'd have to totally not have any identity with any of it, because it's like you're sort of like you were saying, stellar, as the universe upon the universe, which is the space of I, and am is something slowed down, as you said, methodical and care. The
That's
sort
right.
of care.
Anyways.
Yeah, but anyway,
I have a
but people
question
were very literate. But we should talk about a bit of science. I don't know.
In 4026,
4026.
are babies still born naturally, or is there a robot in the house that gives birth to the baby, incubates it, grows
Oh
it,
yeah.
gives birth?
Women have fertility, you know, way past 100.
Really?
Yeah,
That's
and
good
they
to
all
know.
look like
That's good to know.
young girls, sort
Yeah,
of thing still.
right.
So, yeah, so that's a bit of a difference that I noticed.
So
also.
women in the future can have babies past 100.
Yeah, absolutely, they're all fertile.
That is
as men.
amazing.
Men also, you see.
That's
so men also,
fascinating.
you know,
So
they kept
you
their
can be
fertility.
101 years old and still have a baby with a woman.
Yeah, the things that I saw
That's
about that
beautiful.
was that none of them had any menstruation.
What?
But they talked about, you know, people were very ancient. And when I went to the museum, I saw little dog boxes that people lived in back, you know, in the year 2000, I think, 26. It was terrible.
Yeah, it's a
but-
trend now. They call
but
them
it
tiny
was-
houses.
people then were looked upon everyone back as extremely primitive, but even cannibals, all sorts of things. A bit that was said that before the age of Aquarius, people were very estranged, and they were made to be that way because you had slavers had taken
Because
over
we're being manipulated
by
all the time.
a
Everywhere.
criminal banking cartel of a one world order. You see.
Look, do they finally in 4026 get rid of the constant hypnosis that's being used on us today?
Well, Confucius spent quite a bit of time helping to see what he could do to get things organized, and he wrote a lot. He did what he could to have even positions in power, like with accounting and everything, in fact. But it was this which is missing in Confucius, and that's these administrative councils that sit above the legislative assembly. So where someone like he did went also to some position and did what he could to actually influence from the position itself, it kind of really didn't work, right? But if you study Margaret Mead, she's a genius in an area, and Gregory Bateson was someone that I knew, her husband, but very amazing woman, and she
Margaret
brought
Mead.
qualitative research. Yeah, she's sort of like an anthropologist, and anthropology suddenly becomes like really like a science incredible, of course, because it's very qualitative. It's sort of like you're looking at all the variables, sort of thing. And that's she went into some of these Polynesian communities back then, and did anthropological sort of study a bit, and wrote books and things. But Gregory Bateson was really pretty amazing as well, and studied a lot of body language and these sorts of things, which was really gave people today who like if you do a degree like what I did, you're going to get 2 or 3 degrees, in fact, because you have investigated something, and you have to have a background to be able to investigate that,
Wow.
otherwise you can't.
So you go for 1 degree and you end up with 2 or 3.
Well, when I said what I wanted to study, at first it took a year and a half, and I was a bit disappointed because I thought I knew how to ask a question, and I had 5 ogres. Wow. And they were only going to let me into the club they were in, that I got their training and a bit their same sort of understanding logically. So, like, for instance, I said like things like, oh, well, I feel like when people are playful, they're more using all of their brain, and they would go, well, that sounds right. Yeah, that's right, but like, give us a question that you could research. And I say, well, yeah, that's a question. And I say, well, it's really a very nebulous question. How are you going to study that, you see? And you have to have a question. So it took me a long time, but eventually I came to a question. It was a robust states of pleasure and aversion, because I had to have robust states, because if I just said pleasure and aversion, they said, well, you know what?
Yeah, that's too vague.
How do we know this person
That's
was
not
in actual
specific
pleasure?
enough.
Yeah, exactly. Good, thank you. So the question was, in robust states of pleasure and aversion, the lateralization of your hemispheres that engaged in these states, you see. So now I was able to study this. But before that, it took me a year and a half, and they were just like, they wouldn't read what I had written. No. What they did was they weighed it. Each of them, they sort of just, honest to God, felt the weight of it a little bit, asked me a few questions, and that was good. I mean, oh my God, it was stunning, okay? But they were ogres, for sure. I had 5 of them for 19 years.
In 4026, the flying machines, are they, is there certain brands like Toyota and Honda, or do these flying
Now, what
machines
something
have
I noticed was that they
monopoly?
people owned everything.
Really?
Yes, and that was a strange thing to me, because no, everyone I met was someone that was stunningly developed,
Really?
right, and their children also. That
Wow.
was something which I personally saw was remarkable.
Were they
right?
born developed? Could they put a chip in their head?
What was done was to not have transhumanism, which those were issues that people had back in 2026, which were kind of groupthink for people, but not their own groupthink. So it was not, most people were aware really in the time of the day actually what were going on, or the perils of what happened back then. But but putting chips into people was disastrous back in 2026 and before it all, and that's what I saw. I saw graphene oxide and these things was the new asbestos and it really damaged people. But people could have eaten an icy pole or a lollipop, licked it, or an ice cream, and been next to an antenna, and it would be sayonara to the person because they could get a blood clot.
I once noticed somebody eating an ice cream sandwich, and it's so funny because they never told anybody they had ice cream sandwiches.
Where a telephone back then, like a cell phone, they called it. It would be able to emit a signal, and for 30 seconds it can emit a signal enough and do that 3 times, but it would cause a blood clot to be, and within a short moment, so that could be planned, and it just happened like an assassination, you see, because these were things that were going on where it was the use of equipment and technology very wrongfully.
How are they getting rid of blood clots? Right, because how do they get rid of them? Do you know?
By dissolving the graphene oxide, there were substances like a blue manna that dissolve that because it has enzymes that can help dissolve that down. There was a substance called life colloid also that people came to be aware, and these things grew like crazy actually because they've got so much enzyme in it that you're talking about substances that kind of couldn't be broken down back then.
My question is,
they weren't into the body anymore, but also
to get rid of the
a great insight was to how to clear them away.
Or a syringe?
No, it was the substances which were so highly voltage leveled on a micro level that it, like chlorine, which they knew about, would wipe out all DNA and you would not have any protein left by chlorine. And they use chlorine on various things. And a dioxygenase, which is 2 enzymes of two oxygen atoms connected to a chlorine molecule. And these were things which is perfectly inert in your body, but these are things naturally that someone has as blood-borne inhibitor, which block and stop the expression of malfuncus in the yeast in your body, which is sort of a foreign protein. They were the things which I saw. These were things that people studied, and they really got a lot of insight from people 2,000 years before this, you see. And so that was something really, really studied quite a bit, matter of fact. I was very, very surprised at the knowledge of cloning and these sorts of things. And then what use it was to actually have grown certain things that I saw even in the day that people were using in this. But there were substances which I saw raise the blood, have the fluids of the blood to have a 1 volt everywhere, and that was life hydrate or vitamin L. And that's the substance.
Vitamin L?
That's in human breast milk, yeah.
Really?
Our species exact. It's N-acetyl-neurominic acid. So we know that still today.
That would make
back then, that was something that people were just only learning a little about. But that's the major substance as a vitamin, and it actually makes all the other vitamins, you see. Yes.
What?
So once you had vitamin L, which was life hydrate, that's what it was called, and it's got N-acetyl-neurominic acid in it, but it's the primary substance which activates your cell membrane, and it causes you to even have an immune response or anything. It's so vital, matter of fact. But also, too, it's a substance that protects your oxidation, and it blocks and stops oxidation as well. So that's, when I looked into it, and they really were keen to tell me a bit about how longevity was, and they were things which I investigated with these hologram devices, which it was for me to actually connect to a few people that absolutely had specialized in certain areas themselves, and their account was, I want to tell you, I don't know, might have taken them 53,000 hours or more, each of them, or something. To get to an account like that, you see. So it was so incredible. Yeah, it was like sitting in front of someone that would be far beyond any computer and getting them to answer a question.
How long were you there? How long were you in 4026?
I was only there for those 3 days.
Wow.
Right. Yes.
3 days is a lot.
Yeah, it was. It was 3 days of actually, well, sleeping, resting, but also partaking of things during the day, but meeting and connecting with people and going various places. But also, like, incredible, actually, being able to have time in the afternoon and connecting a bit with people, because it was for them and I just to be looking at what happened, in the past.
Did any of them ask you to open up a bank account for them for like $10? Because by the time 2,000 years interest, that's pretty good money.
Interesting, because currency was just simple, and it was not anything that I saw. Interestingly,
no paper money.
No, because everyone was a banker.
Everyone was a banker.
They were the bank, yeah.
Interesting.
You see, they were the bank because they owned every bit of currency that was created. That was something that told me that happened back in 2026. They saw this was sort of a revolution that started to become more aware 2,000 years ago.
Decentralized money.
Yeah, but there was these things that you're talking about right now was very interesting to me, because I was sort of had a mutism whilst I was there. I sort of could feel that nothing about anything was exist except for kind of what was present in the moment, and that to me, I kind of had no knowledge. So it was like, oh my God, I was receptive only as I was accepted and sensed of everything that was given to me, and it was sort of passed on by like an inductive process. It wasn't something, or suddenly I saw that even rocks, it would be possible to raise genius, you see, because a DNA library exists in our body.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And then the vast majority of it,
not everybody,
only by circumstance comes to be triggered.
But not everybody with their library.
And they called them codons.
Okay, so
back in the day, 2,000 years ago.
Codons.
So they call them codons, yes.
We call them codons today.
Well, that's what they call them in 2026.
Okay.
But yeah, that's right. I guess you could say today.
Our libraries
in 4026, you're looking back and seeing just what was written. But right, so it's sort of talking to you today with someone in 2026.
Animals. Do we have animals in 4026?
Incredible. What I saw was unbelievable relatedness. Very something which I was privy to was an event that they'd had before I arrived, and that was really like a whole month of reverence that they had spent in nature, and everybody showed me just some few things which kind of was their pet thing or something, you see. So it was just incredible, because they were accounting for various things, and but great connection, and
any animals
living in peace. The thing that I saw was most everything was just living within a natural realm of everything, and peace existed with the animals.
See birds? Did you see any birds?
Oh my God. Birds, when we came down to various lands and stuff, in gardens and things that's like this, birds were just enormously, tens of thousands in the bushes outside.
That's a lot of bird poop.
When down where I was, in the valley, up on the mountains where I was like quite peaceful, because it was very deep, more beautiful. It only took seconds to get there, basically. So, yeah.
Now, was everything a flying vehicle, right? No bicycles?
No, not everything was flying. The things that I saw in the ground that could connect you was quite extraordinary, because you'd just go through and into one of these shuttles, and you'd open up, and it'd be like you'd taken the time to go from one bedroom to another in your own house.
Wow.
But
That's pretty fast.
well, yes, quite. I mean, a bit more than that, but really quite fast. That's right. Incredible. So you could go to places in the city and get things. You see, or go and actually, we went and visited people as a family. You know, that I connected in with. You know, one of the evenings I was there. Yeah.
Wow.
And that was what we did, was to actually go through. But you could. But I saw this actually was how things were going on, and this was something explained to me. Right? So,
but no rails or roads?
The
Rails,
personal
roads?
craft were incredible. That's what I thought was incredible, amazing.
Okay.
Right, and they floated.
So we didn't need roads. We didn't need
and stable
rails.
like crazy. Huh?
No rails, no roads.
No.
That's good. Don't need bridges.
Yeah. What I saw was beautiful paths and things, and then people what I saw in the rivers and things, and the things which were going on, which to me were some things was very unusual, especially sort of the different sorts of recreation and things. Yeah.
Is the legend of the Loch Ness Monster, do we know what happens by then? Is it real? Loch Ness
Loch Ness
Monster.
when there were tsunamis, they had washed up strange animals which people kind of really would wonder about back in that years, 2,000 years ago.
You just solved it for me.
But these were the things we have alive today. It's just that many of these things most people really didn't know about, but suddenly we were starting to become more aware of all sorts of species existing because satellite could pick up various DNA and stuff.
I think I figured out Loch Ness right now.
Yeah.
It's one of those apocalypse fishes, the long ones. Probably got stuck in there, or maybe through a hole.
It was interesting that you'd find fish all the way down in the ice, for instance, recently. So far inland is unbelievable, but the scientists would think, well, how could those fish be down there? This is like 1 mile down under the ice.
Wow.
And so you don't think that, in fact, 3 mile wide caverns exist where the ocean comes inland? Yes, it does, underneath the continents.
Okay.
And those are cavernous, huge, massive waterways, and that they are tidal, you see, yes? And so, today we know all those tides and things, but things have moved in the last 2,000 years than what they were back then.
All right.
America has moved much closer to Europe, and the North Atlantic has been closing over. So it's then you'd have to go back, and which we did. I looked at the cartographic sort of maps of various things that had happened. Yeah, and
T-shirts.
calamity and things as well.
Did you notice T-shirts in the future?
Oh, I didn't see T-shirts quite like we have them, right?
Really?
But I did look at clothing and things they had in the museum that was from that time. Yeah.
I bet you there was a T-shirt with the Rolling Stones tongue on it. I bet that was in the museum.
I think the things that they had collected was stuff that showed how people were using words a little on shirt and things, but to describe kind of mentality and stuff a little, to understand things. But things that we saw more were back then were sort of colourful, sort of like let's see, spirit shirts. In fact,
spirit shirts.
Well, that's what they described them in 4026.
Well, you know what? I'm gonna make spirit shirts.
And so, but their interest was just like in kind of art, I guess, and things mainly. But some of the stuff that was ugly and things, they showed things.
Really?
But yes, like where people were insane, they had writing all over the place, and sort of, so it showed you an example of what people had, or what they called mess nest. Yes. Because in their day they studied sort of all sorts of things which it could create insanity in times gone by. And one of the things that people did know a bit about because of research was the use of rats, which was highly unethical. What they did, but they called it mess nest syndrome. Yeah.
Ooh.
But I guess actually all you could say was things I saw were so beautiful, mate. Inside,
Yeah.
oh God, decoration wise. Yeah, one thing I couldn't know what was inside or outside. That was one thing that was remarkable.
What?
Yeah, they made the garden more. You see,
Really?
yes, and walls could be more see through, so your eyes weren't sort of boxed in.
Well, that sounds like a lot of fun. I tell you what, folks. And we are just going to take a break. We'll be back before you even know it. And stay tuned. Okay, folks, we are back. Back before you even know it. Check it out. Dr. Joe, talking about 4026. You said you were there for 3 days. How did you sleep?
Interesting, of course. What happened was such beauty, of course. I went in the dawn, so when I left, it was sort of in the dawn, so it was in the morning. I arrived. Seemed like it, just take seconds, but I arrived more in the afternoon, late afternoon, a little on the first day. So I only had that first part of the day. Which was in the afternoon. But then as the sleep, what you're talking about sleep, it was for me to be taken to Showan, a place which I would rest, and that I could have slept if I wanted to. So it was so incredible. But first it was just interesting to me, actually, how people slept, but very beautiful because the lights at the night were more red, like soft red, warm light, somewhat. They never used any blue light at the night. So in fact, I saw in instruments and stuff, but the lighting also, when I went out at night into the city and stuff, the light and things like this was quite unusual. I could tell I was in a totally different place.
Red light in my bedroom would drive me nuts.
The only light that people had of all light after the night was more warm light. That's one thing. All instruments and things more were this way, and that was the colour. Second, and it was not like somebody would think about doing it another way. It was just sort of, but it was interesting because we, the people, I found out, owned it all. And we'd paid people to make things, and they showed me various people that had made certain things and stuff. That was interesting to me a little because I was interested in sapphire technology because they had stored information for 2,000. 2,000 years they'd been storing information in sapphire technology, which starts to come to be 2,000 years ago. You see, yeah. So it was. That's right. And everybody knows that today, you see. I'm talking about 4026. But sleep was first, I saw that everything was more lined up north-south. That's one thing.
Really? So they all wanted boys.
They were lined up north-south, they told me, because the alignment of the earth. When you place a seed, which they showed me, there were some things that was interesting to me. The experiments show that the seed is lined up with the longitudinal current more of the Earth, and that's kind of north-south because the Earth's turning from west to east. So it's accretions more points which travel north-south, and the effect is, of course, that we're falling south, you see. Right.
Were you on a mattress or an energy wave?
No, that was another thing also too. What I saw was what they had were just these sort of thin pads. Quite incredible, matter of fact. That was the most comfortable sleep I ever had.
What?
But I had no sheltering types of behaviours at all during the sleep. Something which was impressed upon me was they could tell how much REM sleep somebody had, and so that was something which was described to me a little more about what the benefits of this was actually, meaning not rapid eye movement.
While you slept, did you have any goggles or glasses or anything on your head?
No. What it was that I saw also too were people lay flat and they had just some slight kind of like a cushion, gorgeous, that was made that fitted just to the shape of the neck, basic, and left the head to be the same level as the mattress sort of thing. But it wasn't a mattress; it was sort of a mat. Beautiful, in fact, but the material, that was something which was surprising to me. It was just like, I could describe it as sort of like silk or something, I think.
What about
but
the
warm.
material, the clothing? We talked about t-shirt stuff. How did the material feel? Was that very similar to what we wear today?
It completely was incredible because it could withstand water and nothing could stain it. That's one thing. So it was it was just
Stain
not
resistant.
needed
I
to be
like it.
washed. That's one thing. Second, it was material that was made that was far infrared reflective, and that was something else. Also, too, the garments were all made more where the gusset and stitching was absent. And so that,
Wow.
to me, in the way
That's
the garment was put together, was how
insane.
did they do that? But that's like
Sounds like 3D
also
printing.
too. What I saw was just things. So the vehicles and things also made the same way.
Could you
so
do
it was
4D printing?
not made necessarily in parts per se, but much more molded out and things. You see.
I wonder if we could do 4D printing.
4D printing is what they did to actually do so many things. It was incredible. But the thing what I saw was they had critical timing because they were keeping time into a quadrillion units in a light second, and so this was the processing speed, and that was radical to me because things were more instant. See, yeah.
So that's
Instant.
how they handled the water pressure in the showers.
Water pressure where the showering and things was where you cleansed and things was also quite amazing to me. They were beautiful, and this was the most, I guess, extreme lavishness of these people. But there were two places which was shocking to me, and that was one was the bathroom, which was incredible, just like a palace in the way that you could wash and basins and things and such.
Were they using the 3 shells? The 3 shells instead of toilet paper.
No paper was used. That's another
What?
thing. No.
How the hell?
No, they all washed.
Really?
Every single one. Yeah.
Wow.
There was no paper like that, so that was something else also.
What about the bidet? Did it also have like a blow dryer?
They all had various things which would cause someone to actually really, massage and clean.
Really?
Poop, I saw, wasn't considered the way people think about poop today.
No way.
Right. People actually didn't think about it in terms of something like let's see, it was clean to them.
What?
Yes.
Anyways.
But the other thing was also too, people actually smelled amazing to me, and that was something else also too.
Really?
When I hugged them and things like that, I could smell some. And you know what? I tell you, everyone had a slight something like it's got a strange, but it was sort of amberine, but very beautiful. Matter of fact.
Really?
I'm going to only say that I could feel sedated a bit because of the fragrance.
Obesity
Right.
is obesity in 4026.
You don't see anyone, that's another thing. I saw people, like I was saying, in their youth and incredible fitness. And I was surprised when I found out some people's age, actually. I was just really shocked,
I'll tell you what
some
shocked
people
me.
looked very young, like incredible, matter of fact, you see. But the very thing that I saw also too were that the people in their finest, their hair all became more white. That was something.
Really?
And these people were maybe.
I wish I had hair that
100
wouldn't turn any color.
they were over 160
I don't
or
care
something.
what color their hair is.
they were over 160. But it should show like someone's, age and beauty and things such at this age. Yeah.
All right. Fantastic.
What else also too? Oh, other things which was interesting was the temperature, mate. Yeah, because I saw that most of everyone slowly came from about 75 degrees, it looked to me,
What?
Fahrenheit, when I asked what the conversion was, and it went down to around 57 degrees or something, at night, and it always would, the temperature drop through the night, slowly but surely, and it was mimicking what I asked them, the
Wow.
natural occurrence of what causes us to be able to remain more and have good non-REM sleep. So anyway, so you could look into this a bit, like, because there are things which you could see is sort of more about all this insight, actually. You
All
see,
right.
yeah, today even, right.
Well, that's
What else also too? The covers, by the way,
the
were
covers.
light, like unbelievable.
The covers.
Like I didn't even, yeah, the covers that you covered over yourself.
They were
Like
light.
it's for sleep you were talking about. Yeah, they were so light. It was incredible. And yeah, that's right. But you could actually like squash it, and it would all go to sort of nothing basically. So it was very light, incredible. Yes. So those things which was interesting to me also too, colour and things that's like that. There was much more pastel type of colour, nothing too bold or anything.
Could people move their houses?
Houses were what I saw where I was, just went to places where people lived, and these were just gorgeous what I saw. But I asked about like what others did, and they said most people are living this way. They said, you see, which I could see that personal flying craft came into various places and things, and I saw, oh my God, quite a lot of people. It was like quite amazing actually. So, but it was like a village where people were meeting and everything. Otherwise, it only took them seconds to get to the village.
I tell you what, if flying cars, right, that's going to be prevalent soon. I think would be a good idea. Let's develop Machu Picchu, right, into a modern neighborhood. That way people can fly to work and fly back to Machu Picchu. What do you think?
Well, Machu Picchu was built at sea level and finds its way up there. And you have to know that most people didn't know that mountains could get thrust up, and they were very young, matter of fact. See? But people didn't know that because at the time they all were put to be of something which it was called an amnesic type of condition. But what I saw them call it, they called it a transderivational search for information. So where somebody would be said like if somebody had their hand out, right, to shake, and you wanted to shake someone's hand, and that was your greeting, and then someone didn't give you their hand, you see. So suddenly it's sort of like what's called a transderivational search for information goes on, because it's sort of like we have patterns perhaps to have dealt where something is like that. And so those were things that was going on rife back in 2,000 years ago, and other things which they called let me see, Dunning-Kruger back then.
Dunning-Kruger?
Right.
What is that?
Someone would look that up. It sort of knew things a little, but they saw that people realised that lots of people had such a grandiosity, and these were people who had a condition neurological.
Guilty.
Well, everyone, in a manner of speaking, who's great, they do know their greatness, that's for sure, right?
I do. I hate being humble, folks. I'm extremely humble. I hate showing it.
Well, a perfect detachment is the most godlike, and that was something else also too that I saw. People could have really had much more perfect detachment. But the biggest thing I think was amazing to me was people's speech was about literal things, and non-literal things was not occupied anyone basic. And so at the time that I was there, it was unbelievable. It was like as if I was in eye awareness in a meditation ongoing, practicing looking at and listening to who this master of self was that was placed in front of me. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that I saw was that who this person was always someone that was behind me in the way that they were talking to me, but also to below. So that was another thing which was something interesting, because that contrasted things which I could feel, which was a little bit inside me whilst I was there, which was really all to do with how behaviours, attitudes, capability, your environment, all these sort of things would be a string of events that was behind the average person, which wasn't their identity, you see, right? So it's sort of more like, whole brain patterning, which was what I saw, was, which they described to me, was like being in the frontal cortex and lengthening the inspiration, and quite a bit was to do with what the breath was itself, you see, yeah? And so people were in inspiration, and they told me that there was a state that would relate to more inspiration versus like someone going like that with a breath or something, you see.
Our job's a thing of the past in 4026.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that was something also that was just so incredible to me, because what I saw was there was no pretended service for any financial gain, because no one needed any financial gain. Also, too, it was interesting because they said that people were fooled because they were said they had to trade and do all this sort of thing. But people were making things where I saw, and everything was sufficient where it was, and there was none of this inefficient stuff which a monopoly caused back then, you see. Yeah, major, matter of fact, not minor. Yeah. And this was something which wasn't even kind of talked about really at all. It was sort of criminally redacted by the criminal banking cartel of the One World Order that was had run things, you see.
Don't get me started.
Oh, well, where somebody is, they're always behind a desk, which is favourable lies, of course, because that's a better desk to be behind than one that's apparently got truths, which is slightly unfavourable.
It's better to be behind the desk than in front of the desk.
To be able to be away from it all, like you said before, as having a perfect detachment, exactly. But the funniness of the whole thing, really, isn't it? You know what I mean? Because you can see that an elephant could have been fearful of a small spider, of course, and so nothing was related necessarily to size like you thought or I thought or anything. In fact,
it's a tragic comedy, this whole thing we live in.
Yeah, exactly. And that you and I are more, like you were saying, pebbles on the beach. That's true. In the sand, of course. And you, the audience, is more like the ocean, which personally I feel like that's amazing. I think that's so unbelievable, actually.
Which I don't feel comfortable in the ocean. Thank you very much.
Well, you're on the land as a grain of sand on the beach.
I can handle the beach.
Yes, and everything else is really so gorgeous, but it's everything else around you you're connected to. But you're just like me or anybody as a grain of sand on the beach. Yes?
Yes.
And that. Would you think that actually things that said, it's sort of like the wind? That was what I was going to ask you.
What was that?
Things said, that's sort of like the wind.
Sure, yeah, it means nothing.
Yeah, it whispers sweet nothing, except for what's something in the moment that makes sense to you.
You know, unless you're going to mix those words in with a little bit of action, a little bit of motivation, the words mean nothing.
Yeah, so in fact, would you say that when you've ever listened to someone, it wasn't kind of maybe what was said too much, but actually what was being lived between the beats?
Maybe.
Yeah. It actually, so what's memorable, actually, that's an interesting thing, because a lot of things we go to and do things and stuff, but it's really not too memorable, right?
No, what's memorable? Pain and happiness, right? Pain and pleasure. That's what is memorable about the memory, right?
Yeah, so when we get rid of memory, and we live in the moment,
Ugh,
like you said, is so
yes,
beautiful, right?
it is.
Because people cling
Let's
to
live
the
in the
bank of
moment.
those two banks, don't they?
Mhm.
And then they're not in the flow, like you were saying.
So,
So that I think that science agrees with you.
I think we need to discuss how banking is in the future because it sounds like it should be a goal eventually, right?
It's amazing because the cost of having upheld the past was so great. You know,
Yeah.
it was just not anything that could really be sustained because trillions and trillions of dollars was completely unaccounted for.
Hey,
Caesar.
when they look back in history, we are going to be the era of spending.
Well,
The
this is
era
what
of
happens
spending.
in the age of Aquarius, in the golden age.
Mhm.
You see, because everyone has an account. You see, because when everyone back then, when I looked, became a Holocaust, COVID survivor. That's what they called it.
Ooh.
You know,
Yeah.
but before the point of it lost was trillions, and it just was not accounted for. So because behind the scene, the accounting, none of it was really done properly, and it was set up like a bit of a lie. You see,
It
but
sure
they had
was.
like a pentagon, what they called it, but it would have lost billions and trillions of dollars. And then when you looked at the bookkeeping, where anybody was, even everything, in fact, actually the banker itself, the record of the return on whatever was taxed, you see, it should have been something that everybody assessed, but everybody was thought to be something they would avoid what that is, but they didn't know that that would be money returned to you because it would be money that was spent out of the public account. And so monies that were spent out of your public account was monies that ran everything, and the big thing was that
Wow.
no consideration was given to we the people, you see, but it was their credit that was spent to get everything done, and it was all spent on wars and things like that, you see. So today,
yeah.
like in the year 4026, you could see that people that were tax protesters, that war tax protesters and things that such like that, you could understand that they had to be able to have a life like that, because otherwise you could be considered as a criminal per se, because you could have identity and things. You see, that was wrong. But identity, which I saw, was a political condition, and that came about because of title. And so what I saw was the criminal conversion of title that took man and woman away and put like pronouns and all sorts of things there which couldn't be described, and it was fictional, and states of mind, like the word human, for instance, which wasn't our species of woman. You see, human means like a colour of man, where woman is our species, that's our genes. Like kangaroos are kangaroos, a platypus is a platypus, koala is not a bear, and these are marsupials. And so we had tigers that were marsupials, you see. We had, the Tasmanian devil and the Tasmanian tiger, you see. It was actually a marsupial and had a pouch and suckled its young. So you've got a platypus which has eggs, but it has fur, it has scales, it has claws, it has webbed feet, it suckles its young. And the platypus roamed across the whole of the world 75,000 years ago, according to, carbon-14 and these sorts of things, but also to the bottleneck that happened to us when, an asteroid slammed into the Antarctic, and kind of shifted everything. And even Australia's being pushed north still. You see, that's the growingness of the direction of things where the Earth is growing.
I got a question for you. You were there for 3 days. Is there crime in the future? Did anybody pickpocket you or hurt you in any way? Is crime still exist in 4026?
What I saw was so incredible, matter of fact, that people's language with each other was like really conscious, and most everybody that connected to me I could feel that something was actually said to me from inside myself, matter of fact. Something that I saw also too was the master was very different in their brain, and so that was surprising. It was somebody who was the servant's servant, and so they were always searching for who that was, and this was the master. The other thing I saw also too was the person that was the absolute master, and they did have like a range of people, was the one who had left their ways behind the most, and they had such a knowledge of the variable of various sort of things which they talked a bit about, which was to do with storing information and storing it in the ether and having like a quantum in computing versus at this moment, like it's terrible. It's like a Flintstone, you see. It's really terrible and it can't sustain itself whatsoever. Not sustainable. But this which I saw was something so sustainable and believable, and I wrote a bit of a white paper about it.
So no crime?
No, there was no. Would you say?
War?
There was no limited mind function.
What?
Right, and also too, there was no, like I said, illiterate types of conversation. That was the most shocking thing. That was incredible. Matter of fact,
Not even
that
on
I
my
saw.
part? Not even on my part back then.
Where people would be back in Aristotle's day, of course, like you're pointing out, going back a couple thousand years or more, if you do that, you'd be thinking, well, you study Aristotle, it's pretty good.
Well, it sounds like there's no comedies in the future.
Oh,
Everybody's all serious.
No, the north, the east, the west, and the south is, the news. That's right, and it's not something which kind of like has been the news that you would think,
North,
like
east,
the
west,
news that was that people had back in 2026, 2,000 years ago was much more corporate. It was coming in at an ankle level only.
Don't
There
get
was
me
no-
started.
Human interest actually at the time, yeah. But the very thing that I saw also too was that no one had any dissident state, so that was incredible. You see,
That's amazing.
right? So what I saw was there was no ostrich. That was one thing,
No ostrich?
Yeah.
What do you mean by ostrich?
Well, ostrich is sort of what people did back in 2026 and before this.
Oh, put their heads in a hole.
Yeah, well, it's like I kind of didn't want to know, and that would
Yep.
help you with your stress. And then there were two other ways that people did, and it was so popular. And those two ways, kind of, they did it to relieve stress in themselves. And the other one was they would wake up to focus on everything wrong. And then the other one was wake up to see things blamey.
You know what
And
it
those are
sounds
things
like?
which.
It sounds like in the future they take the mindset of the character Matthew McConaughey played in True Detective, and it sounds like in the future they will no longer divert their eyes, huh? They will no longer divert their eyes. What do you think?
Well, the words no
Huh?
and longer. Well, when you have something it means no, but it is longer. Oh, well, okay, so it must mean something is forever or not. Let me see, once and for all time, I guess. But what you're talking about a little bit is like, well, can be like certainly something where you change things in ourselves. Exactly. Oh, absolutely. Like, well, new behavior generators, like you're pointing out, could be being installed, of course, because those are things which become triggered because they're things which are like you could see around yourself where you go in the future. And those things sort of trigger this more, and it's sort of more subconscious. It's not. No, these things are more subconscious, like you're pointing out. It's not something that you. But I guess like where somebody learns, to let me see, uncreate. There you go.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah, uncreate.
Does Netflix control our televisions?
The very big thing which they called this was the big uncreation.
What?
People had to not create things that was ridiculous.
Oh, come on.
And what was created, though, they had to uncreate and so they called people that came along shrinks because they would shrink what someone had in their head. Most people weren't thinking right because they were using nominalizations, unspecified verbs. They were very materialistic orientated. Let me see.
It totally makes sense what you're saying. I get it.
But not necessarily, because in the West that's the way, but not in the East.
Yeah, I was
You
just
see,
giving you an example.
well, in the East, it's sort of like they really know about I. But if you ask them about the body, they say, well, it's a bit of an old rag and you just throw it off.
So they don't know about bubblegum.
Well, these things are sort of like a whole, and this is what the Toltec taught primarily. And when I looked and I saw it was the Toltec, meaning people came from the city, and this came out of Turtle Island.
Anyways, I heard that the Toltec are actually pretty short. Guess what, folks? That's all we got for today. I hope you enjoyed the show. We have to continue 4026 because we haven't even touched the tip of the iceberg. So, Dr. Joe, leave us with something simple that we could do on a daily basis. That'll just make our lives better.
I think that we could tune into little things about our own language. That's one thing, right?
Okay.
Because that's amazing, isn't it? Because you keep reminding that this is how I'm keeping myself company. Of course, you're modeling excellence. We're living what we speak and speaking what we live next, and every single word we use has a physiology. Let's see. Because of it, I'd say, the only way that you could improve upon silence would be to be able to have cleared up something dichotomous, basic. But it could be just a stick that you use to do it, and that could be just am I aware, and I is empty, and awareness is care, simple, and one could be from emptiness, like have care, but it doesn't really require anything to be done, and to be in the moment. That's right. And this is the present.
How do we
and
get
this
to
is
the
the
moment?
gift.
How do we get to the moment?
It's a process of clearing away all internal dialogue, because the internal dialogue competes massively for attention to the outside world. So that there's things. It's sort of really, but I'd say that's probably one of the major things.
Can I just say, I am and I care, and that'll bring me to the moment?
Well, you say I love you, as you point out. There's no other way that you could say that without diluting it, as you point out. That's right.
Really? I pointed that out? All right.
Yeah, because you can't qualify something to be qualified because it doesn't need to be qualified. It's sort of like when you say, I aware, am I aware? Or I am.
And I care.
I am. You just say I am.
That brings me to the moment.
Well, it can, but then certainly, am I aware? It means you're not, and it means you come into the moment. So this is something which you're calling yourself.
And I care.
And now one is like totally in the present.
Anyways, what I want to leave everybody with is embrace technology. Embrace technology, and I'll tell you why. It'll free you up to where you can enjoy more free time. Take us out, Dr. Joe.